Hello there. It's a few years since I did one of these collection type videos, so I thought I'd, where am I looking? I thought I'd have another go at doing my most updated collection of vinyl records. And yeah, it's one of them things I've been putting off for a while. I thought, oh, I'll do it when I've got some more interesting records. I'll do it when I've lost a bit of weight and I can look at myself on the video without cringing too much. But I thought, you know what, I'll just go for it. So I hope you enjoy this video. I hope there's lots of interesting records that inspire you maybe to make your own video of your own collection. I've only got quite a small collection, but I love it and I'd like to share it with you. So here we go. And we start off with the Beatles, and Please Please Me, their first album. This one really pops out of the speakers. I absolutely love the sound of this, especially in mono. People make a big thing about how mono sounds and a bit snobby about it, but I do think on albums like this it really helps it come out of the speakers and to have it not separated. So one of the best debuts of any band, I think. You can just hear the intention coming at you when you hear this, and most of it was recorded live, I believe, as well. Fantastic stuff. And that was given to me by my father-in-law. So I'm going, from now on, if there's one from the father-in-law, I'm going to call it the O'Grady collection. So this is the first one from the O'Grady collection. And you've not got Deja Vu. I've got it again from the O'Grady collection. Yeah, I've got two copies. I can't bear to get rid of either of them. And the one has a better cover, one sounds better. So, you know, can't get rid of them, can you? Next up, we have a more recent edition of one of my favourite Beatles albums, Rubber Soul. I got this from the Beatles Museum so it was a bit expensive, but I had to get something, so this is what I got, Rubber Soul. Absolutely love this album. Very much a fan of the Beatles in that sort of transitional period between their sort of early beginnings and their psychedelic endings. So yeah, Rubber Soul, brilliant album. Next up would be my favourite Beatles album. Love every song on it from beginning to end, Revolver. And yeah, if you haven't heard Revolver, you really need to check out. Brilliant, brilliant album. And this is a newer version as well. Then we have an old version, original version of Sgt. Pepper. I don't know which way around to do this. Yes, iconic album, iconic cover. And this is from the O'Grady collection and has all the original cards and stuff in it as well. And a great gatefold there. Love this. Great, great album, of course. Next up, a more modern version of it. So I tend to play this one more. It has slightly, dare I say it, that slightly better sound, but yeah, great to have a modern copy so I can keep the other one a bit more in its best condition. Then we have formerly the White Album. It's not very white anymore. This is from the O'Grady collection as well, and number, whatever that number is, it's that one. The original ones all had numbers on them, so really, really cool. Not my favourite Beatles album, a little bit, one of those, maybe a bit too long, but some absolutely brilliant songs on here. Helter Skelter, Blackbird, all sorts of amazing albums. I don't know why I'm looking at the back because it's white. Next up we have, I only have the record for this one, and it looks like it's seen better days, lots of various scribbles on it. This was from the O'Grady collection, so I'm guessing it was my wife when she was little or one of her siblings that drew on this. But it's Magical Mystery Tour. There we are. Again, not one of their best albums, but I do love, is it Blue Jay Way? Fantastic. And Flying as well, all the Harrison ones. Then we have Let It Be. I tend to put this one before Abbey Road because it was recorded before Abbey Road, so a bit controversial, I know, in the ordering, but I tend to see this one before Abbey Road. And I tend to see Abbey Road as more fitting as a finale as well. Although this is a fun album in itself and has one of my favourite Beatles songs on it, The Two of Us. And yeah, I got this recently for £6. It's not a particularly good copy of it, but it's nice to have a copy of it. So I found this in a very bizarre record shop in Harrogate. one where you had to sort of be buzzed in and they sort of locked you in and out and things like that. And it was, yeah, very bizarre. But yes, fun record, so love it. Then we have a new version of one of my favourite albums ever, Abbey Road. Absolutely brilliant from beginning to end. Such a great way to bow out. I think they decided a long time before this to disband, but I think they kind of decided to go out with a bang and to give it one last shot. And you can really tell every single Beatle is at their peak here. Brilliant, brilliant album, beginning to end. And then one I got from the market for £9, I believe, local market, the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl. And it's a fun record, not one I listen to very often, mostly because it's at the height of Beatlemania and it's just screaming and screaming and screaming all the way through it, to the point where it becomes almost unlistenable. But it's great fun to hear them at their live sort of zenith at the time of Beatlemania. Okay, that's the Beatles done, and we're already 5 minutes in, I do apologise. Then we have one of my all-time favourite artists, Björk. I picked this up, this is debut, I picked this up from my favourite local record shop at the Electric Church in Winsford. Definitely worth checking out. I think I got this for about £20 as well. Maybe not her best album, but the one that first got me into Björk, and I love it. Great stuff. Then we have possibly my favourite Björk album, Vespertine. I got this as a present for my darling wife, and I absolutely love this. Great gatefold, brilliant, really intimate sound throughout. One of the things she did with this album was she was pregnant at the time, and she wanted to make the theme of the Vespertine, which is like a vessel of an important thing, and to make all the small things in life amplified and special. And so a lot of the beats and things in here are constructed of small sounds like the crunching of snow and the crackling of records and things like that. So yeah, absolutely beautiful. My favourite album by Björk. I'd love to get all of her collection on vinyl, but it is quite expensive, so one day. Next up we have the first Black Sabbath album. Love Black Sabbath, really want to get more of their stuff on record. This one I got from Sainsbury's, I believe, so it's a newer version. I'd love to get the, look at that, I'd love to get the original, but this sounds brilliant. One of the most haunting opening tracks to any album ever. Love it, absolutely love it. Next up we have a bit of Blondie with Eat to the Beat. Great fun bit of new wave, bit of reggae in there as well. Possibly their most well-known album, Parallel Lines. All killer, no filler, definitely fantastic album. Next up we have, okay, we're into the Bowie, and as you can probably see behind me here, I am a huge Bowie fan, so I've got quite a few of these. I'd love to get the entire collection, hopefully one day. So we have Space Oddity. Then we have The Man Who Sold the World. I'd love to get the original cover of that, but this is another one I picked up at the local market. Great album. Then we have classic Hunky Dory. And we have also classic, I was so chuffed to get a copy of this. I got it from the local antiques store, Dagfields. Really fun place to look around. And yeah, it's David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust. The album that first got me back into into Bowie as a teenager. I was into him as a kid from Labyrinth, but yeah, it was that album that got me back into him as a young punk fan. Then we have Aladdin Sane with the iconic cover. One of my favourite Bowie albums, very, very underrated, Diamond Dogs, which is like a musical a version of 1984 until he was actually going to do a musical version of 1984 until the Orwell family denied him the rights to it. But yeah, fantastic dystopian future concept album. Fantastic. I'm going to say fantastic a lot, aren't I? It's a great fold again, showing a dystopian city that it's all set in. Hunger City, I think it's called. And it's a little bit worse for wear. It's like a bit split there, but yeah, really sounds great. Love this album. Then we have Young Americans, his Plastic Soul period. Favourite on this one is possibly, it's either Can You Hear Me or Win. Both great songs. Then Station to Station, this is a new version, love it. Great out. There's only like, is it 6 tracks on there? But just brilliant from beginning to end. Station to Station is possibly my favourite on there, but Word on a Wing is also absolutely beautiful. Low, my favourite Bowie album, as you can see. I'm doing all this in reverse, so it's a bit weird. This album saved my life, I would go as far as to say, a few times. And it's carried me through some really difficult times in my life. Wow. I need to do a video just about this album, really, but I won't bore you now. But yeah, definitely check it out if you're a Bowie fan. Then we have the next in the Berlin trilogy, Heroes, which I don't listen to as much as I should. Not my favorite, probably my least favorite of the. I know it's very controversial to say, but possibly my least favorite of the Berlin trilogy. But it still has songs like the title track is absolutely iconic, and of course I do love Moss Garden as well, which is a kind of oriental electronic ambient track, gorgeous. Then we have, in my eyes, a very underrated one again, Lodger by Bowie, his last one of the Berlin trilogy. There we are, that's the full front cover. He went a bit slightly dodgy on this one with his fascination with the far right and stuff like that. But anyway, I think it was all for effect and for controversy, that's the word. But yeah, so many great songs on this. This is the album, I would say, where he starts to sound like the people he's influenced, if that makes sense. So there's songs on here where it sounds a bit Talking Heads. There's, yeah, it's that kind of new wave. Really good, really good. Then we have Stage, great live album, double live album, original, love it. Then Scary Monsters, A Grower. I didn't like this one when I first heard it, believe it or not, apart from the singles, Fashion and Ashes to Ashes, but I am starting to love this album. It has definitely grown on me. Next one, a lot of people don't rate this as highly as I do, but I absolutely love Let's Dance from beginning to end. It's one of them albums that has such an atmosphere to it and such a sound that carries throughout it. Then we have, oh dear, we tried to do Let's Dance 2 and it didn't quite work. This is Tonight. It has got a couple of good tunes on it. I do love Neighborhood Threat is a great song. Lots of co-writes with Iggy Pop and a duet with Tina Turner that's best forgotten about. Okay, that's all the Bowies, I think, for now. I'm hoping to get the entire collection eventually. Then we have a really good compilation of Billy Bragg's John Peel sessions. Definitely worth checking out. The amount that this man portrays with just a voice and a guitar is phenomenal. Then we have, I only have a couple of Kate Bush albums. I'd love to get them all. We have Lionheart, which I'm not as big a fan of her early stuff, her early sort of theatrical stuff. I know, again, sacrilege, but I like her more intimate, heartfelt, later stuff, really. But this is a great album anyway. This is the ultimate, isn't it, really? Love it from beginning to end. Hounds of Love. Favourite on this would be Hello Earth. Wow. Then we have the Buzzcocks in a different kitchen. Their debut. I'd love to get more of theirs. Great punk album. Talking of great punk albums, The Clash, Give 'Em Enough Rope. Not always seen as their best, but I don't know why, because put this on your record player and it just sounds brilliant. Absolutely. The guitars, when you hear them on vinyl, raw, powerful stuff. I'd love to get all the Clash ones, but I haven't as yet. Then we have quite a few Elvis Costello albums. I'm a huge Costello fan. We have this year's Model, his debut. No, sorry, his second. We have Get Happy. We have one of my favourites that's not talked about much, Trust. The first record from Elvis Costello that I got from an ex-girlfriend, and it's Punch the Clock. He's not a big fan of this one. I love it. It's one of my favourites. Then we are on to the Christians, Colour. Don't know what to say about that one really, it's okay. The Cure with their debut, which I've totally forgotten the name. Three Imaginary Boys, sorry Cure fans. I surrender my Cure fan card. Yeah, I'd love to get all of theirs on record as well, but at the moment I've only got their debut. Great album. Then I have a bit of a special one. I've done a video on this one before. It's Tomb of the Cybermen, a Record Store Day special. Doctor Who, I'm a big Doctor Who fan, as you can probably tell. And it's my first of the list that's on coloured vinyl. Oh, better hold this right or I'll get complaints. It's on sort of silver Cyberman, slightly smoky vinyl there, and it's a 2-disc. It's the whole story, and I think Tomb of the Cybermen is my favourite Doctor Who story, so I had to, didn't I? I had to get it. It was slightly expensive. I think it was 22, 23 quid. Bit expensive for me on a teacher's wages, but I had to do it. Then we have one of my all-time favourite local bands, definitely worth checking out, Don't Call Me Ishmael, and their last album, sorry, this looks a bit tatty with that on, I'll take that off, there we are. Their last album, Saint Ishmael, possibly their best album yet, definitely worth checking them out on iTunes, or if you can get a vinyl copy. And this is a coloured one as well. Look at this, isn't that beautiful? It's supposed to be pink. I sort of see it as a bit purple. Imagine it looks a bit pink on there. How gorgeous is that? I love it. Not a bad song on this fantastic album. Just put that back in. I do like a local music radio show, so I get to hear all this great local music, and it's a real privilege because there's so many great bands around here. Then we have the Nick Drake Pink Moon. Love this album. Need to get his other albums. He did 2 more, didn't he? I think so. But yeah, I love that one. Then we have some Bob Dylan. We have from the O'Grady collection, Another Side of Bob Dylan. Bringing It All Back Home. And then a recent acquisition that I got. It's a reproduction, or whatever you call it, a newer version. My favourite Bob Dylan album. I've been really obsessed with this album over the last year or so, Blood on the Tracks. It's his most intimate album, his most heartfelt album that I've heard. Sorry, Dylan fans, if there's more. Love this one. Definitely worth listening to. Then we have a bit of a weird one, electronic music from the O'Grady collection. And yeah, great smell. I love that vinyl smell. Dusty smell. It's like old books. It's just a collection of weird and random noises from the early days of synthesizers in the 60s. And yeah, some great sort of Doctor Who sounding stuff on there as well. Then we have Every Collection Should Have It. Fleetwood Mac's Rumours. This is a modern version of it, and yeah, all killer, no filler. Not a bad song on it. Love that album. Then we have, this makes me slightly sad. I have one record from Tusk. I don't have the full 2 LP version of it. I hope I can find it one day because I love Tusk. Definitely worth checking out if you're a Fleetwood Mac fan. Then I have the best of Fleetwood Mac, which is, the greatest hits of Fleetwood Mac, which is the Peter Green version of Fleetwood Mac. I love all versions of Fleetwood Mac, really. And I really love, I think Peter Green is one of the few guitarists of that new blues boom in the late 60s, early 70s that I love. Not a huge fan of Clapton and people like that, but I do love Peter Green's very, very emotional guitar. Then we have, I think it's my only Peter Gabriel one, unfortunately. I'd love to get the other ones. Certainly the first 3 are fascinating. This one is just called Peter Gabriel, but a lot of people call it Melt because of the cover, of course. Then we have, oh my goodness, if you can get this in your collection, get it, because it's, yeah, you have to have this. What a record. What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. And this is a modern reproduction of it, but absolutely sounds amazing. One of the things I love about this, apart from the intense political lyrics and the sweet, sweet soul on it and the amazing production, is the fact that it's kind of one big song. Everything flows into every song flows into the next song, and if you listen to the end of the album, you can actually hear faint parts of the first song, so it almost goes in a complete loop. And yeah, every collection should have that. Then I have possibly my favourite Beatle on his own. Living in the Material World, George Harrison. I'd love to get some more George Harrison solo albums because I love them. Next we have a bit of class, High Society. I haven't actually seen the film, believe it or not, but the soundtrack is fantastic. I really like it. It's got Louis Armstrong on there. It's got Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra. If you listen to this soundtrack, you'll know most of the songs. They are classics. I think are they all Cole Porter ones? Yeah, music and lyrics by Cole Porter. So although this was a lot later than Cole Porter was around, this was a retelling of Cole Porter's amazing music. Then we have another one of my favourite albums, Lady in Satin. I got this for £8, I believe. Yeah, from my favourite record shop, and it's one of my best sounding records, believe it or not. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. You can really hear her. You can hear her life in this music. It's her last album that she made. She sounds very broken and damaged by life, by a very difficult life that she had. And it's all the more beautiful for it. So yeah, definitely check that out, Lady in Satin, Billie Holiday. Then, a bit of an old one from my own dad's collection. This is The Planets by Gustav Holst. If you haven't heard it, you can really hear some John Williams on this. Obviously he came afterwards and was heavily influenced by this, but yeah, very filmic, big, grand classical music, gorgeous. Then we have Janis Ian, Between the Lines, one of my favourite singer-songwriter albums of the 1970s. If you don't believe me, go and listen to it. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. She's so young on this, but it's dark, it's emotional, it's relatable, it's brilliant. And I was first introduced to this, like so many good things, by The Simpsons and the song at 17. But yeah, the whole album is worth checking out. Then we have James Gang, Rides Again. James Gang, most famous probably for having, oh my goodness, my brain isn't working. What's he called? From the Eagles. Joe Walsh, thank you, I knew that. Most famous for having Joe Walsh in the band. Brilliant bit of psychedelic Americana rock there, definitely worth checking out. Then we have brilliant electronic ambient album, could listen to this on repeat forever. This is Jean-Michel Jarre, Equinox. Then one that was gifted to me by I think they're a Dutch band that played a festival that I played and just gave me this. It's Jengi, it's a tenor, and great bit of power pop. Joy Division, Unknown Pleasures. What can you say apart from one of the best albums ever made? Then we have one from my childhood, one of the funkiest 80s albums ever, Kid Creole and the Coconuts with Tropical Gangsters. Oh Annie, I'm not your daddy, etc. Really good stuff. Then we have another local artist that I love, the King's Pistol. Think The Doors, think MC5, really good band. And check out this vinyl as well, red, splattered. Look at that, isn't that fantastic? I went to the album launch of this and it was one of the best live gigs I've seen in a long time. Brilliant stuff. So that's Evil Spirits by King's Pistol. Check him out if you can. Then we're on to the McCartney. We have McCartney 1, or McCartney rather. Great album, very underrated, one of my favourite of his. Then we have possibly his best album apart from Flaming Pie, certainly before Flaming Pie came out, and that's Ram. What I love about this record, if you look on the middle, it has To Ken, what's it say there? To Ken from Pip. I love little sort of things like that. Some people hate that, don't they, when there's things written on it, but it just makes it more personal to me. I love it. Then we have Wildlife, not one of their best ones, but I like it. That's the first Wings album, third Macca album. Then we have Venus and Mars, very, very underrated, love that album. Then I am a bit remiss in not having, as yet, Band on the Run, so I do need to get that. It's one of those albums I go past all the time and think, oh, I'll get that one day. Never get around to it, but yeah. Then we have Red Rose Speedway, another really underrated one, great album. Then I've got a 3 EP. Well, I think I got this from Stratford-upon-Avon or Shrewsbury, somewhere along in Shropshire sort of way. It's Wings Across America, great live three album one. Then I have a bit of a present off my lovely wife, Wings Greatest. Then one I very, very rarely listen to, not one of my favourites, McCartney 2, but there are some good moments on there. Another local amazing band, sadly no more, but the Madding Crowd with their long EP. Bob Marley and the Wailers with Uprising. Bob Marley and the Wailers with Live. Where is it? It's London, isn't it? Hammersmith? Lyceum. Lyceum in London. Great live tunes on that. Then one of my favourite albums I was obsessed with as a teenager, was really chuffed to get a reproduction of it, The Modern Lovers, their debut album. Then we have, following on from The Modern Lovers Live. Big fan of Jonathan Richman's writing, so I'd like to get more of his. Then Monty Python's Flying Circus. I'm a big Monty Python fan, so I have to have at least one of theirs. Then a slightly new discovery for me anyway, the Moody Blues, big fan of theirs in the last sort of 5 years or so. Great combination of classical and rock music, Days of Future Past, definitely one of their best. Then In Search of the Lost Chord, look at that album cover, that's amazing, isn't it? Then On the Threshold of a Dream, both great albums. And lastly, a solo album by Justin Hayward and John Lodge called The Blue Jays. They were in between Moody Blues records. Definitely worth checking out. Love that one. Then another childhood one, The Muppet Show cast album. When I was little, I used to memorise. You didn't have much to do back then in the 80s. I used to memorise the whole script of this with my friend Paul, and yeah, we could do the whole thing. I think I probably still could. What a great album! That's Muppet Show cast album. And is there anything better than the Muppet Show cast album? The Muppet Show cast album too. There we are. Then my favourite Muppets film, Muppets from Manhattan. Love that film, love that soundtrack. Then we have, from childhood to teenage years, Nirvana, Nevermind. Great. Nirvana, In Utero, doesn't get any better. Then, Tom Paxton, Ramblin' Boy, one of my dad's old records. And I keep this one, even though it's possibly in the worst condition of any of my albums. Look away, Vinyl fans. Oh, it's missing a big chunk of the record, so you can only kind of play it from about the third track in, but I can't get rid of it. It's sentimental value, and I do listen to it quite a lot, even though there's a big chunk of it missing. It's a great folk album, and definitely worth listening to. Sorry, Tom. Then we have, talking of great folk, from the O'Grady collection, The Pentangle, with Basket of Light. Bert Jansch, one of my favourite songwriters, and that's him with John Renbourn and all the rest of them. Now this one, I'm sure most people have heard of this one. This is Dark Side of the Moon, and believe it or not, I got this for a £5. and it's actually a really good version of it. It's a blue label. It was one of my biggest finds back in the day when vinyl was very untrendy. In Oxfam, they were actually just not giving away, but they were putting vinyl records in frames and selling them for a fiver and I thought, oh, I wonder if the record's actually in there. And it was, and it's a good copy. It's got the blue label, which I believe makes it a good one. I don't know why, but it's one of the first ones maybe. Yeah, it sounds amazing. I was very late to the party with Pink Floyd. Was always a real punk fan as a teenager, and it was seen as a bit sacrilege to like Floyd. They were seen as the enemy, weren't they, really, for the punks, and you know, they sort of seen as a dinosaur band in inverted commas. But the more I listen to it, especially over headphones, if you ever get a chance, listen to Dark Side of the Moon with headphones and a glass of something medicinal. You'll never hear it quite the same again. It's a beautiful, beautiful album. The next album would be the one behind me here, which is The Division Bell. And the reason why it's out there is because I've been listening to it very recently. So it's on my stand by my record player. And it was a present for Father's Day recently. Lovely record. And double record. Double blue record. Check this out. How nice is that? Blue see-through record. I'm easily impressed, but yeah, I do like a bit of coloured vinyl. And yeah, I've never had a blue one, so yeah, it's a good album actually. I've been getting into it recently. A bit noodly for my liking. More of a fan of classics like Meddle and Dark Side of the Moon, but yeah, definitely worth listening to anyway. Then we're on to Iggy, talking of punk, Iggy Pop and the Stooges with Raw Power, and one of the most visceral sounding albums you could ever hear. Then we're on to another one of my favourites from childhood and beyond, Queen. So we have Queen 1, or Queen, great sort of album. Then we have Queen 2, their Spinal Tap moment, great ogre battle and things like that, brilliant bit of Spinal Tap. Then we have All Killer No Filler, definitely, Sheer Heart Attack, great album. News of the World, another great album. If you've seen that famous Family Guy episode where Stu becomes absolutely terrified of it, that's the album cover. Love it. That is, if you're going to get into Queen, that's probably the album to listen to, I would say. Then we have my favourite from childhood, A Kind of Magic. That's when I first got into them. Oh, I also have Flash as well, somewhere, the soundtrack. I think it's in the loft, but I do have it. Then we have Live Killers. No, Live Magic, from that sort of time. Of course, Queen, always great live. Oh, is that the end of my Queen? I thought I had more than that. Maybe I have somewhere else. Rage Against the Machine, very important album to me as a young, angry teenager. Brilliant album. Couldn't get more different. The Bumper Rainbow album from when I was a kid. 20 fun songs from television's award-winning children's programme. Look at that. And this is when it was Rod, Jane and Matthew. So if you're a Sooty fan, you might recognise Matthew Corbett there. Then another one of my favourite bands, Radiohead. I'd love to get all of theirs, but at the moment I've only got the two, probably my two favourite Radiohead albums. Kid A. Look at that, Gatefold. Double album, and double album of their last one, Moonshaped Pool, which is possibly my favourite Radiohead album, which is difficult for me to say because I've liked them since I was 13, so a long, long time ago. But yeah, what an album. Incredible. Intimate, beautiful, emotional, heart-wrenching. Then we have another superb album, Transformer, Lou Reed. Every collection should have it. Another one by Lou. I'm a big Lou and Velvets fan. You'll see some more Velvets ones in a bit. Lou Reed, Berlin. R.E.M. Love R.E.M. Only got one of their records. This needs to change. So this is Reckoning by R.E.M. Rolling Stones, High Tide and Greengrass, the sort of, it's not a greatest hits album, but it's a kind of early greatest hits album. It's the ones you'll recognise every tune on it anyway. Another band that I've got seriously obsessed with over the last few years, Roxy Music. So I've got most of theirs now. I think I've got all but one of their records. Definitely worth checking out. So underrated, so influential, brilliant. First album, straight off the bat, one of the best debut albums of any band ever. Then we have their second album, the beautifully dark For Your Pleasure. Their third album, the first one that's without Brian Eno, but actually kindly he said it was his favourite, Stranded. And can I open it up? Yes, I can. It's the full Risque cover. They were quite known for their Risque covers. Then I am missing Country Life, so I need to get that one. Siren. Possibly, I'd say this is the one to start with if you've never heard any Roxy Music. Great sort of bridge album between their early experimental stuff and their later more ambient stuff. This is a kind of a bridge album between them. Jerry Hall there. Manifesto, very underrated. Bit new wave, bit disco. Very interesting album, especially the title track. One of their most decried albums, Flesh and Blood. Yeah, it's not their best, I would say. I mean, you can take off 8 Miles High and The Midnight Hour. They don't add anything to the album, those covers, but it also does have things like Same Old Scene on it, which is an amazing song. It has Oh Yeah, it has Over You, Rain, Rain, Rain. Yeah, it's got some good tracks on it. It's not a bad album. I don't think they did a bad album. And possibly my favourite of theirs as a full album. I mean, it hasn't necessarily got my favourite tracks on it, Avalon. I should say what it's called, first of all. But it's the feeling you get from this album. It really is a place to visit in your head, if that makes sense. Then we're on to, obviously, the most highbrow record I have. Are you ready for this? Sesame Street Fever. Look at that. Look at that. Then one of the most influential records on my life, never mind the bollocks, the Sex Pistols. Absolutely brilliant. Beginning to end. Doesn't get any better. Possibly the best punk album ever. That and London Calling, which I still need to get. We then have Pete Shelley, XL1. Very interesting album, solo album from the Buzzcocks frontman. And if you have a look on the back here, it says, don't know if you can see that, the computer program on side 2 suits the ZX Spectrum home computer. Transfer the program to your computer cassette player or cassette. Start program in sync with the first track of the LP. If you go onto YouTube, someone's actually done that and you can see all the visuals. What a great idea for the early 80s that was. Look into it if you get a chance. Then we have possibly my favourite singer-song... No, not possibly. He is my favourite singer-songwriter, Paul Simon. So I've got a few of these. I'll get through them as quick as I can because time is ticking on. We have Paul Simon Songbook, his first, I was going to say unofficial solo album maybe. It was... What happened, right? They had the first Simon & Garfunkel album. It bombed and Paul went off to England to learn his trade on the folk scene and released that solo album. Whilst he was away, Tom Wilson, the producer, added some guitars, bass and drums to their song Sounds of Silence, and without them knowing, it rocketed up the charts. And the first they heard about it was when they heard it on the radio in the top 10. And yeah, came back with Sounds of Silence, which you can tell is kind of, capitalising on that new fame. Then we have possibly, I would say, Simon & Garfunkel's Sgt. Pepper, the most experimental of their albums. Bookends, great album, not talked about enough, great album. I'd say the Holy Trinity really is Pet Sounds, Sgt. Pepper, and... yeah, I stand by it, Bookends. There it is, I've said it. Then we have probably the most famous album, Bridge Over Troubled Water. Then one of my favourite records ever, Paul Simon's first official solo album, which is called Paul Simon. What I love about this is that he could so easily have carried on what he did on Bridge Over Troubled Water, but he didn't. It's almost like he needed to fully readdress himself as a songwriter, and this is one of the most intimate and stripped back, brutally honest albums out there. I love it. One of my go-to Desert Island discs, definitely. Then we have There Goes Rhymin' Simon, one of the worst album names ever, but such a great, another amazing album. Songs like Something So Right is on here, Learn How to Fall, I love. Not a big fan of Loves Me Like a Rock and those sort of ones, but yeah, it's, yeah, One Man's Ceiling is Another Man's Floor, American Tune, so many great songs. Then we have Live Rhymin', with a live album from that time. Then one of his most famous, Still Crazy After All These Years. These are all original ones, as you can see, a bit beat up, still play great. One of my favourite of his albums, again, from his ill-fated go at movies, the movie soundtrack to One Trick Pony, great album. Another great album that doesn't get much of a look in, Hearts and Bones. Again, one of his most experimental albums, I would say. Then everyone knows this one, Graceland. I could easily do a video by itself on that, so I won't say any more. The first album, ironically, that I heard on CD. So I don't listen to this one very much on vinyl. It blew me away on CD. It blows me away on vinyl as well. Rhythm of the Saints. Such a great album, you need to hear it. Then another one of my favourite bands, Susie and the Banshees. I've got quite a few of theirs on record, all of them on CD now, I think. The Scream, great debut. I haven't got Join Hands, possibly my least favourite Banshees album. One of my favourites that followed it, Kaleidoscope. Great bit of synthesizer on there. First one that had John McGeoch on it. It's also got Steve Jones from the Pistols. Bit of a transitional period for him. Often seen as their best album, Juju. And I've got it the wrong way around. There we are, Juju. Single-handedly invented goth on that, I would say. Although you can disagree with me in the comments below. Then we have A Kiss in the Dream House. John McGeoch's last one with him, that's John there. Yeah, it's good. I love Cascade on that one. A 12-inch single, Fireworks. It's got Coal Mine and We Fall on it. Great symphonic sound on that one. Just trying to get this pile of records out of my way. I won't stack them for long, don't worry, record lovers. Then, one of my favourites, I'd put this in my top 3, definitely, Banshees albums, Tinderbox. That's all I'll say about it. Go check it out. It speaks for itself. Then we have The Smiths. Very, very beat up copy of A Hat Full of Hollow. And yeah, definitely worth checking out. I love their version of What Difference Does It Make on this. This is kind of almost like a John Peel collection. It's not like what you'd say is an official album, but definitely worth having for all the versions on here. And yeah, what I love about What Difference Does It Make is you can really hear the rhythm section on it, and they don't get enough kudos for how much they were a part of that band. Then we have The Queen Is Dead, possibly their most famous album, maybe their best. I'll leave that for Smiths fans to decide. I do need to get their others. I'd love to get Metered Murder and Strange Ways Here We Come in particular. Then we have The Specials, love a bit of ska. First album, I'd love to get more Specials. I think that one was produced by Elvis Costello as well. Then one of my wife's that I got her recently, Stardust. This is a soundtrack, double soundtrack album. Really, really beat up, but the only copy I could find. So many great tracks on there if you want to pause and look at them all, but great 60s soundtrack. Then we have Ringo, my only Ringo Starr solo album, possibly his best one, but there are a few others that are definitely worth getting, and I will be doing at some point. Return of the Jedi, first film I ever saw at the movie theater. I loved it. Talking Heads, this is one of my most recent purchases, again from the Electric Church in Winsford. and it is Remain in Light. Definitely worth checking out. Brian Eno, absolute genius, produced it, and it's kind of built around loops. They sort of built the songs around loops, so definitely worth checking out. Then we have another of my favourite classical pieces, Pathétique, I think you call it. It's Tchaikovsky. All the emotions you could possibly want in a piece of music. Then we have Television, Marquee Moon, and I do believe this is a white coloured vinyl. One of my favourite proto-punk albums. Yeah, white vinyl there. Every collection should have that one as well. Very, very good album. Guitar playing on that. Then we have the staunchingly wonderful Thin Lizzy with Jailbreak. I need to get some more of theirs, but I do love this. Watch this, if it works. How cool is that? It's like a sort of TV screen with them running away from some post-apocalyptic, can't say that word. Yeah, great rock album. And as well as all their great rock stompers, they actually did some, Phil Lynott, the singer and primary songwriter, he wrote some really good ballads as well, which isn't talked about very often. Then we have, I think, my only picture disc. Picture discs sound terrible. So it was described to me why on a particular YouTube video. I think it's because it's sandwiched. It's like 3 layers and they're sandwiched with very, very thin vinyl, but come on. That is pretty cool, isn't it? I wouldn't recommend getting picture discs, but if you see a really cool one like that, then go for it. This is No Strings Attached, and I'm a huge fan of the music from the Barry Gray Orchestra, and yeah, they're all on there, all the major themes. Then we have one of my dad's records, UFO 1. Love this album. There's certain bands that I only love one album of, and UFO, I would say, was one of those. Pops, I think this was my introduction to heavy metal or heavy blues. Great first album, definitely worth checking out. Classic, talking of Brian Eno, we have the Joshua Tree. I got this for incredibly cheap. I think it was about £3 or something. Brilliant album, beginning to end. I know most people, it's not trendy to like U2 at the moment, and there's the Bono factor. He is a bit annoying. But yeah, you can't beat Joshua Tree from beginning to end, really. Then I was saying about the Velvet Underground before, if you're still with me, we have the original. I got this in Edinburgh. Great little record shop called Unknown Pleasures. And there was a guy behind the counter who was Glaswegian, and no offence meant to Glaswegians, but I always think it sounds like a really aggressive sounding accent, even when people are being friendly. And the story that my wife often tells is how scared I looked when the guy said, "What?" I'm gonna try and do Glaswegian then. Put it over there while you're browsing, pal. And he was actually being kind, saying, "Put it down while you're looking at other records so you don't have to carry it around." But I thought he was, I was like, not the face, don't hurt me. Anyway, then we have, oh, no, wait, before that. A very recent, the last record I bought. Their second, very difficult to listen to at times, album, but it has got some absolute classics on it, such as There She Comes Now, Sister Ray, the title track, White Light, White Heat. And I got this recently when we went away to Llandudno, and I was very jammy, I stumbled across a vinyl record fair, and I spent too much money on this, really. I think it was 20-something pounds, but yeah, I'm a sucker for, look at that, see-through pink smoky vinyl. Love it. So that is White Light, White Heat, their second album. The only Velvet's album I don't own as yet is actually my favourite one, which is their, what's the word when it's the name of the band? It's their third album, but it's just called The Velvet Underground. And It's much more laid back than their other albums. So I just put this away. And yeah, it's definitely worth listening to. It sounds a bit like, you can hear shades of Beck in there, you can hear shades of REM. Very influential. I mean, a lot of people talk about the first album's influence. Obviously, it's hugely influential, but the third one was too, in different ways, to different sorts of bands. Then we have Loaded, their last album, and I don't count Squeeze personally. Loaded, the last album with Lou anyway. I love Loaded. I know a few people don't, but I absolutely love it. Not a bad song on it. Then we have this startling looking thing. We have Velvet Underground live with Lou Reed from the 60s, two LP set. Then War of the Worlds, the Jeff Lynne, that would sound cool. The Jeff Wayne version, musical version. Absolutely love it. One of those you have to listen to with the lights off, and yeah, great synth sounds, and some great special guests on there as well. Then we have Who's Next. Doesn't get much better than that as a rock album, does it? You've got, you know, started off with Baba O'Reilly and finishing with Don't Get Fooled Again. Yeah, it doesn't get any better than that. Then, huge fan of Stevie Wonder. I'd love to have more of his. Big fan of his 70s stuff in particular. When I was younger, I thought Stevie Wonder was just all about, I just called to say I love you and things like that. So when I actually heard his 70s soul records, I was blown away with just how good they were. This one is Talking Book. Everyone should hear it. Brilliant, brilliant album. Then my favourite Stevie Wonder album. Could listen to this on loop forever. It's Inner Visions. Not a bad song on it. Love listening to that album. Then we have a difficult one to remember the name of. Fulfillingness's first finale, which I got for £5 in Oxfam, and yeah, great album. Does it open up? Yes, it does. That's cool. Like it. Sideways kind of thing. This pile's getting very big. I will put them away in a minute. Double album, most people's favourite. But possibly one that I don't listen to that often, actually. It's got some amazing songs on it, but it's something about double albums, isn't it, that it's difficult for them to really keep your interest all the way through. I think with London Calling again being the exception, but yeah, Songs in the Key of Life. It is a great album. I'm not saying it isn't, but I don't listen to it very often. This one, often overlooked. I would say his last great album, Hotter Than July. You'll know things like Happy Birthday off it, but there's also All I Do, Ain't Gonna Stand For It, Master Blaster. Great album. And he's got that sort of 80s look on the front there, hasn't he? Brilliant. My friends recently went to see Stevie Wonder. I was very jealous. Then we're nearly into the end. We have one of my wife's records. Let's Have a Party with the Yetis. Look at that lot there. Great English folk band there. They look like they're having a good time, don't they? Then we have, only 2 records left to go. And they're both by one of my favourite songwriters, Neil Young. We have this one. Gold Rush, of course. After the Gold Rush. Great album. I think my favourite on this would be Only Love Can Break Your Heart, which I actually thought was a Carole King song when I first heard it. I thought he'd covered it because it sounds so much in her style. I'd love to hear her do that, actually. And one of my most recent acquisitions, again, from the Electric Church in Winsford, and such a great album that doesn't get talked about hardly enough because it's one of his best, I would argue. And it is Zuma. Let's call the whole thing off. Neil Young and Crazy Horse. And if you are after a recommendation of a Neil Young album, I'd say listen to this one because it's absolutely brilliant. Phew, that is it. It took me just under an hour to go through my entire record collection. I hope you've enjoyed that. I'm hoping over the next few years before I do the next one that I'll find lots more interesting albums to bring you. But I'd love to hear what you think of those albums I've talked about. And what your favourite albums are that you have on records, your holy grails of albums that you want to try and track down. And that is me, Tim Lee, and I hope you've enjoyed this. If you'd like to see more of my videos, please subscribe, like this video if you are feeling kind, and leave a comment below. Thanks very much for watching.